Hello and welcome to another very virtual edition of Spotlight, the current affairs program where we have conversations with informed minds that remain relevant conversations. My name is Nuong Faalong. Today we are zooming in on the current and ongoing ministerial vetting exercise, and we are going to make some observations as well as interrogate some of the observations out there about the exercise. To help us with that process, we have two governance experts joining us via Zoom. We have Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah, a governance expert. We also have Dr. Nansata Yakubu. She's a democracy engineer, also a governance expert. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, you meet our guests. Stay tuned.
Unique, contemporary, engaging. Introducing the ultimate talk show that captures, scrutinizes, and stirs up conversations around relevant content across the globe. We talk to the movers and shakers in the tech, youth entrepreneurship, creative arts industry, and many more. Join me, Kwame A. Opoku, usher you to the realm beyond the headlines, new tech releases, trends, and clicks. It's going to be a fun ride on MS Conversations.
No, this is not business as usual. This is a different kind of business. From the global stock market to our central bank to insights on insurance and investment, Spotlight is the show for you. Here, we look beyond the numbers. On Spotlight, we'll tell you the complexity behind the figures. On Spotlight, we examine hardcore financial issues. Join me, Philip Nanfuri, on MX24, together with policymakers and experts as we talk business.
Opinions are like onions. Everybody has one.
Abortion is a no-no. As a human being, you must take responsibility for all your actions and inactions. Your misjudgment shouldn't be enough grounds to take a life.
No. I disagree with you because look, if you do not legalize it, people will go to crack protest anyway who might end up not just kill the baby but the mother as well.
Why should I waste my time joining a long queue under the hot sun to vote for a political party, knowing very well that nothing would be achieved at the end of the day?
Something will be achieved. It's your civic responsibility to turn out to vote. Vote and vote for a good leader.
Governments need to cater to every graduate, diversify the economy, invest in other sectors.
But the government cannot do it all. That is why we need the youth to take up the mantle and set up their own businesses. That is how we will create economic viability.
Here on Opposing Views, we take your views, my views, and the views of the experts and put them in the right context for you, our discerning viewers.
What's up, GH? Welcome to MX Beats, your official entertainment and lifestyle home. And every single week, we're bringing you your favorite artists. Say cheese, take a picture. Shag a pose, make a see, take a picture.
What's the name?
Indeed, we also bring you exclusives in music videos, interviews. Honestly, we have got you covered right here on MX Beats. Who is
wow?
This?
Okay.
Oh, I love this.
I think I know what this is. This is an old you. This guy is not even a footballer. Look what he's
what did I say? They like vintage. What did I say? Jay-Z, baby.
On this show, we help unearth new talent, write the right mix of music to boost your energy.
Big man, big things, yeah. Tim shoes, big things, yeah. You figure say we they come joke me as I they come, my mind was plenty.
My name is Jason Elaine.
My name is Miss Drew.
My name is DJ Varosky, and I'm here to give you the best of music.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Chairman, first, I want to ask the Honorable nominee, what are the three main subsectors within the fishing industry in Ghana? The three main subsectors within the fishing industry in Ghana.
The fishing industry, the three main subsectors. Yes, Honorable Minister. Yes, Honorable Nominee, we're listening to you. Ignore them, both sides of the House, and address me, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't understand the question very well, so it'll be very difficult for me to answer it.
No, Member, can you break it down for her for me, please?
Welcome back, and that was just a brief clip of the nominations, the vetting going on presently, and that was Honorable Hawa Kumson. She is the Member of Parliament for Ewutu Senya East constituency. She used to be Minister of Special Development Initiatives and presently nominated for Fisheries. That was her responding to a question on the subsectors in the fishing industry. Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, today we're going to be making some observations and also discussing some observations about the ongoing vetting exercise. We're joined by governance experts, Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah. We are also joined by Dr. Nansata Yakubu, who is a democracy engineer. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, before we discuss that question and what we just watched, let's look at the composition of the Appointments Committee, 1313. My first question will go to Dr. Yakubu. Does the composition make for fair interrogation?
Indeed. These are members of parliament who would be, at best, interrogating and listening to their peers. Don't forget that that committee itself sometimes contradicts itself also by also having some of its members also being nominees. The appointment committee can also have nominees on the committee as well. So you are a nominee on the appointment committee and you'll also be, asking some questions from other nominees. They are your peers. You have worked with them. Sometimes they are in your party. That will be for those who are on the same side party, or they are in the opposition party. But you've been with Parliament with them several times around. It makes for a fair hearing. This is not a jury place. I mean, it's a place just to ask how qualified people are and to be able to seek answers for what you are estimating to do at a particular ministry or a sector for which the president has nominated you. I don't think anybody goes before the committee to be, what would you say, like a jury trial that you go to be acquitted or to be punished. It's a committee to hold a conversation about the sector you are going. So it does make for a fair trial. People can expand by sometimes asking questions that seem to suggest that you are being asked questions as if you are at a public accounts committee hearing. Some of the questions that sometimes they ask may not necessarily be, but it could also be because they are seeking answers for questions leading to your performance as you envisage for the ministry that you've been nominated. So I think, yes, it does augur well for a fair hearing.
I was just going to bring in, and now that you have mentioned it, you said it's not any hardcore interrogation, but we have seen situations where people have felt a little uncomfortable before the appointments committee, especially when they are being asked questions about their previous office and in-depth knowledge of the office they have been nominated for. Professor Agyemang Duah, do you think some of the line of questioning has been a bit too hostile?
Well, thank you very much. You see, this is the very first time, at least from my observation, that we are having a very assertive appointments committee.
Is that a good thing?
For the first time. Pardon?
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Exactly. Because for the first time, people may call it hung parliament, but the point is that power is very much balanced in the parliament. That's why, as you say, we have 13 members from each of the two dominant political parties in parliament. And that has empowered and perhaps emboldened the so-called minority, in this case the NDC members of the committee, to really play a role that has been long expected of our parliamentarians. So I'm not surprised that this time around, especially taking into account what might be described loosely as a contested election, because, you know, as we speak, the NDC is still in court. The flag bearer is in court challenging the victory of the president, Nana Akufo-Addo. So in that respect, you can sense that the so-called opposition, the NDC, is all out to assert itself. So this has presented us with a very unique situation where for the very first time, we are looking at appointments committee that is fully asserting its independence and asking the right questions, and at times very prosecutorial or inquisitorial kind of line of questioning, all because of the environment within which this balanced parliament has emerged.
Prof, do you think there will be all the people who are nominees who have come before the committee so far will be able to sail through? Because we know that you need at least one vote from the opposition to be able to pass through. Yeah. Does it seem like everyone who has come before, you know, initially it was a bit of a default that once you have been nominated, then you're going to sail through?
Yes.
Is this the same observation we can make of this present committee?
You said it right. Previously, all nominees, even if they perform very poorly at the vetting, will find themselves sailing through. This time around, it seems to me, perhaps for the first time, well, I know that there was a time that my own friend Gabra was, but that was in a technical point, the fact that he didn't have a voter's card. He hadn't voted in Ghana, and therefore the committee rejected him. That was the only instance where a nominee has been rejected. But as I said, on a technical point. But in terms of the normal vetting, we have never had an experience where any nominee has been rejected. This current process, it seems to me, the minority side may want to make a point, an important point too. That is to say, to indicate to the president that perhaps one or two of your nominees don't deserve to be ministers because in the vetting process, they did not display any level of knowledge of their area. They did not show any indication of performance, even though they've been ministers previously. They might use those points to perhaps for the first time register a strong point on that. So I will not be surprised. But if it's going to happen, maybe only one or say two. But I think we have to wait and see how it finally pans out. I will not be surprised at all if one candidate is disqualified by the vetting committee.
Now, if anyone should be disqualified, on what grounds do you think the person would be disqualified? Dr. Yakubu, I'd like you to take this one. And also, I'd want to know if anyone has specifically stood out for you in knowledge of subject matter or sector and has been able to impress with their responses.
Okay, thank you, Nuong. Now, if a person is going to be disqualified, we can see that the strong public opinion doesn't necessarily mean that Parliament will take the bait. I have had cause to have discussions with colleagues, and I tell them, just as Prof said, we have seen so much wholesale, passing of nominees to be apprehensive as to whether Parliament will go the full course and say, look, this time yes, now we have more power, we are going to do A, B, or C. Because by their own standing orders on the issue of how a minister of state is brought, with that whole issue of if a president nominates somebody is for the prior approval of parliament and all those, issues would also come into play. And whether if parliament rejects a candidate, the president will go ahead and still say, I'm still going to appoint this person. Because we know that even if parliament approves a candidate, the president can still withdraw the nomination, as we understand it. We have had cause to see a couple of acrimonious contestations over the period. We all remember ICQ certificate, Anane, a whole lot of other issues. I mean, but they got passed. And I remember on the day they were being sworn in, the president making the case that, people had made a point that you shouldn't be sworn in and all that. But, I'm still giving you the mandate to be able to do. So what I would want to see, if first parliament would disqualify somebody, and if based on that, the president will withdraw the nomination, that would be a good test for our democracy and indeed to see how much influence parliament is going to have in this cycle. That's one thing. And I also agree with Prof that so far I've seen about 3 people that I think have struggled and maybe not being quite up to the standard that I was expecting from the ministerial nominees so far. I haven't seen others that I think, so I don't see more than 1 or 2, or at best 3 would be having challenges with that kind of vote. I would say I have listened to the information minister, and I must say that for the nominations and the vetting processes, I'm sure a lot of people will agree with us that I haven't made it a habit to really listen the full yard to everybody from the beginning to the end. But it so happens that the day is becoming infamous because that was the same day that the minister designate for fisheries was vetted. And I actually listened and I stayed on. And so I ended up that whole day listening to those who were there. So I had the opportunity to listen the full course to the information minister. And I must say, I wouldn't say it was boring, but it was expected. It was at the level that I would expect. There were quite a couple of other issues, fallouts that came from that, but that had nothing to do with what I would think would be his competence to do the work. I also listened to the agric minister. I have listened to the gender minister because that's also another area that I work in. And so I was really looking forward to her submission. I have listened to her. And I must also say that we have to look at what the issues are when you are seen at the minimum. What are the minimum qualifications that nominees are to bring with? Do they satisfy those qualifications? And to what extent would the appointment committee then say you don't satisfy these qualifications, or you were not able to answer questions pertaining to your ministry in a way that suggests that you are not prepared and so you are unfit for that office? So that is where the litmus test for our democratic process is going to be realized.
Information. You also listened to the vetting for, you mentioned Minister for Gender, Minister Designate for Gender, that's Honorable Adjoa Safo. You also listened to Hawa Kumsen, Minister Designate for Fisheries. Now, you also mentioned Honorable Akoto Efiye, who is Minister Designate for Agriculture. And we actually have a short clip of his interaction with Minority Chief Whip, Honorable Muntaka Mubarak. Can we just take that video and then come back to proceed, please?
Mr. Chairman, he also said 2% is by way of extension delivery. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Let's look at that, brings you to 45,737 of the number. Are your extension workers in this country up to 20,000?
No.
And so how do you have extension delivery, the job there being over 45,000?
We are talking about the formal sector and the informal sector.
How does the informal sector perform extension delivery?
You are not aware of that. There is an informal sector
So I'm asking you, how do they do it? So how do they do it? So you tell me, give me examples. I mean, you know, just as you are a minister, you know I'm also a farmer. You know that, even though most of the time I'm absentee farmer. So I want to understand, when you say extension delivery is not only done by your extension officers, which other categories does it? You say including private, and I say, how do they do it? Tell me.
Informal sector.
I didn't get the answer. No, I'm saying that when you say in the informal sector, and I'm saying, how do they do it?
They do it by helping the farmers to plant, to sow, and all that.
Minister, you know that what you are saying is difficult to appreciate, because these are done by Ministry of Food and Agriculture extension workers who assist farmers in various farms. Can you give me an example of a private company or a non-governmental organization that you know are engaged in this?
Mr. Chairman, I also find it difficult to appreciate the question. That's why I'm struggling with answering the question.
Mr. Chairman, in an answer to an earlier question, you also said that plantain is now being exported to the Sahelian regions, where obviously we all know they don't have plantain. Are you suggesting that it is only now that plantain is being exported to northern Nigeria, Kano, Kaduna, and other places?
Not at all.
So why are you associating it to planting for food and for jobs when you know that it existed before?
Why not?
Dr. Nansata, we can hear you. That was Minister. Minister designate.
Having a giggle. Yes. Yeah.
Minister designate for Agriculture, also immediate former Minister for Agric, Honorable Owusu Efriye Akoto, before the Appointments Committee in that short banter with Minority Chief with Whip Muntaka Mubarak. Let me go to Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah. Do you want to share why you were giggling?
Well, certainly anybody watching this clip will giggle, if not laugh aloud. The point is that
was this overly interrogatory?
It was, but you see, there were reasonable interrogations because when you make a statement, it's important you explain further for the committee or whoever has the question to know exactly what you mean. But you can tell that the nominee was irritated somehow by the line of questioning of the parliamentarian, and therefore decided to do the minimum in terms of responses. Yes, no, that kind of stuff, which is acceptable, by the way. In fact, I was advised long ago, somewhere else in the world where I used to live, that the best thing you do when you are being interrogated is to give direct and simple answers, so you don't.
But this is a committee you are trying to win over. Is it advisable?
Precisely. That's why we're laughing, because both of them were playing the game very well. You see, I cannot accuse the minister of any wrongdoing because he gave answers, but the answers certainly were not acceptable. Because if you are asked a question of that nature, it's important to elaborate a bit.
So he could have been more explanatory. Could he have been?
Of course, no doubt. But because I think the parliamentarian Honorable Muntaka was persistent in his interrogation, he also decided to respond in that way. Again, you see, as I said earlier, the minority, so to speak, certainly will be going to the full limit of their powers to exercise these powers that they have. Okay, they are going to do, and for good reason, which is simply that power is balanced in Parliament. Secondly, their kind of, they are not too happy with the outcome of the elections. So the combination of these two certainly will embolden them to go to the full hilt in exploring the authority that they have at this moment. So I wasn't surprised at all. And I'm sure also that, in these matters, so personalities do play a part. Because if you know the two individuals who were in this clip, you know that, as somebody will say, both of them have chips on their shoulders, and therefore they will not come direct, they will play this game. So I wasn't surprised at all. But again, none of them, nobody was at fault. They just did what they thought they had to do.
Now, Dr. Yakubu, given that this observation of the Agric Minister designate doing the barest minimum and giving very straight answers because he probably felt overly interrogated by the minority chief whip, are there any other nominees who came before the House who were able to impress with their knowledge of their sectors?
Yes, I think I watched a bit of the AG, the Attorney General. I think I watched a bit of that. It's the AG, right? Honorable Odame. Odame
Yes.
is AG. Yes, I watched. Yes, I watched. Yeah, I watched a bit of that, and I think that he was one of the few I thought was really pretty much confident. I watched that. I watched Honorable Esla Ekufo.
Oh,
she took me through a whole combination of emotions. She started, she went through all. There were times when it was a bit belligerent. There were times when she was, you expected her to give some rebuttal, and she would actually explain. And there were times. So it's a combination. But she's been before the committee before, and I think experience also helps you to respond to some of the questions. But also those who are former ministers, I think, bring a certain, like the same ministry. For instance, she was coming from the same ministry, going back to the same ministry. So that continuum, I think, allows you to be able to have a kind of way to respond to the questions. And then, I think I haven't watched any much after that. I just saw a few clips, but I remember hers, and then I remember Honorable Damin as well. And then I remember Information Minister, Agric Minister, and that, yeah. And then the first one. You remember the first one that we had to do. The first meeting was also quite, straight to the point.
You watched the one for the gender minister designates.
Yes, I watched for gender.
Ajwa
Yes.
Safu, and you did mention that this was one area of concern for you. Did her submissions impress you?
Well, that's a difficult question because sometimes the submissions do depend.
Maybe I'm also interrogating you.
The submission, let me give you a very interesting word framing that we can use. So you think you have bitten into a bad apple until you now bite into a real bad apple. So whilst I was a bit uncomfortable with her presentation, and I had expected more, so maybe it's my own expectations that were not materialized. But I had expected more because I kind of know she has more and she can do more. But the committee itself, at a point, you all had the issue of she has baby and all those other ones that we had to talk about. But I think what brings it into sharp focus is now looking at the fact that the fisheries came on after that. So that's why I said you think you've bitten into a bad apple until you really bite into, a bad apple. So a kind of. Are
you saying fisheries was a very bad apple?
No, not a bad apple, but I'm just giving you the analogies that you think you've eaten something that is unpleasant, and then you now see something else and then feel, oh, this one is actually much more. In her case, I think it was just, I just sample I could watch. It was wholesome. I mean, I would tell you, I could watch. I can have issues with maybe the way she was answering the policy issues, but I wasn't struggling to complete sentences. I wasn't struggling to conceptualize. I wasn't struggling to talk, you know. But watching the fisheries minister, I can tell you, sitting back, even behind my TV, I'm struggling to say something or say, oh, why, you know, and generally it was uncomfortable for me. I think much also because we those two are pushing for more women in decision making,
Yes.
and we know there are women who can go into these spaces. You know, when a woman is before a committee like that, you also represent a bigger constituency of all women because everybody watches. What I would say has not been too bad within the political discourse now is nobody is really saying that it's a woman, it's because she's a woman. No, nobody is saying that. But I think people seem to understand that she probably was apprehensive and a bit, I don't know, maybe, but these are her peers, so that
and she's been a minister before
for this kind of interview, you know. She was a bit what?
She's been a minister before, so
yeah, she's been a minister, but she seemed a bit nervous. You know, she seemed a bit nervous. So our understanding is it that she hadn't had opportunity to adequately prepare her brief on the ministry she's coming to talk about, or what was the factors that made her uncomfortable in that space? Because her demeanor usually is fine, and she's always quite a very confident woman and honorable. And so we were all quite surprised at that kind of, you know, submission. And I actually don't remember any big fallout from her last vetting, unless I missed something. But to be honest, I don't remember any big fallout or this kind of public reaction to her in the last in the last administration.
Perhaps,
so
perhaps there's a bit more critique. Maybe this vetting is a bit more critical. There's been that argument out there that we just may have a very much sharper lens on this vetting than we did on the previous. There's also the argument, and Professor Agyemang Duah, I'd like you to speak to these. And why do we think there's so much conversation around the Minister of Fisheries designates vetting? There's the argument of it being not about English. Is it because we didn't find her English overly agreeable? Is it a question of the subject matter not being well spoken to, her sector not coming forward with enough plans and enough expectations for her sector? There's also the argument of laying the blame in a different quarters altogether on who nominated her. What is your take on her vetting?
Well, first of all, on the question of English, I don't put much premium on that because even those of us who think we are highly educated, every now and then we fumble when we're speaking the language. This is a foreign language that all of us learned, and maybe we have to learn from that. That in such circles, maybe those who are more comfortable in their own native tongue should be allowed to do so. So I don't really fault her on that. But I think what is at stake is the fact that when you are appointed to such a position, and I think Nansata alluded to that, you've got to prepare yourself to know the basics of the area you've been posted to. So once she was unable to answer such basic questions, for me, that's what the problem was. If you know you are going for interview next week, and no matter how much you know, you've got to go to the books, especially presidential initiatives job that she did is radically different from the new one that the president is posting her. And in the area of fisheries and aquaculture, the whole marine science is involved in all. So if for nothing at all, you take time to interact with the chief director or officers of the area, go to your books, learn a few things to come and show the committee and the country at large that, look, I have some sense. I know at least fundamentally what this new role is going to be. But when you're unable to respond to such questions, I think that's where my concern was. As for the one who appointed her, the president certainly knows why he appoints those that he appoints. Somebody said, oh, is this for loyalty or something? And somebody also commented that perhaps she could be a better women's organizer in her party rather than being a minister, all because of her inability to impress the audience that she has some notion of what her new role is going to be. And that has been the problem, you see. So I think overall, she didn't come across as someone capable of going to perform at this new ministry. But at times we can give her the benefit of the doubt because I don't know her very well, but some people are capable of learning on the job in a very short while. So probably she can take the job and quickly learn the new trade. However, just the fact that she was unable to prepare herself to impress the audience, that in itself, again, takes away even that confidence that I will have in terms of she taking the job and quickly learning on the job. So her particular appointment is still problematic from all angles. But Prof, and I like what the, yes.
Was the fallout with her answers or the questions? Because one would argue that if you ask me basic questions, I will give basic responses to the questions. So was the fallout here about her answers, or was she just simply responding to the kind of questions that were posed?
No, I think there were certain questions that anyone going to that sector should have been able to respond effectively. Of course, there were others that were simply either just put to make her uncomfortable because they knew right away that the lady wasn't up to the task. So that certain additional questions were put perhaps to embarrass her. That was also clear. And that wasn't too nice, I guess. But my concern is that those fundamental questions about her new ministry, those should have been mastered for her to have come to impress not only the committee, but the country at large, because this is a national assignment, you know. And you see, there's another point I want to bring to this discussion. The time that they take. If you follow this trend elsewhere, especially in the United States, which I'm very familiar with, they set time. There's a time frame for questioning. And the questioner has a time limitation. So one person cannot hold the floor for 30 minutes. You know, that is their style. I'm not saying we should necessarily learn from that. But I think when you put somebody down for 6 hours, as some of these nominees were put down for 6 hours, and it then becomes like a court. You trying somebody. But I don't think that is the essence of vetting. It's not, the essence of vetting is not to get people into their private affairs or whatever that is. I'm not saying it happened. But the point is, there should be a time frame. If you are limited to 2 hours, it should be 2 hours across board. And those questioning cannot be allowed to dominate for them to follow up. And the more they follow up, you know, the more uncomfortable the nominee becomes. So I think we got to find a better way of managing this. Look, I'm very impressed with what has happened this year compared to previous vettings, no doubt. But I'm saying that we can improve upon it by looking at the time. Let's place some time limitation and how long one individual can dominate the floor. That is not good because that gives room for questions that might not be necessary at all, but that may be designed simply to embarrass nominees. But the whole idea is not to embarrass people, it's to test people's capacity. You know, that's the additional point I wanted to add to this conversation.
Prof, but if a person qualified, a nominee qualified to be minister in the first term, what disqualifies the person from being a minister again the second term? Does the person need to come up with any stellar performance to be deemed a good fit, especially when we have already, you know, picked the person as a good fit before? It's not like we've not changed the criteria. So what's different this time?
The difference here is that this particular person we're discussing is moving away from her previous position to a new position. You see, so it's important for the vetting committee to figure out if this person has the competencies to perform on this in this new role. So I think that one is clear. But you know, the fact that you have done, you've served as the minister before, perhaps provides the opportunity for the committee also to probe into your performance. And that's what has happened. Because if you notice, all those who were previously ministers and be nominated to fill either their own ministries or other ministries.
Yes. Interior, Ministry of Agri, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Information, Communication.
Defense and all of them. That, for me, was a fine opportunity to really figure out their performance levels because they've done it before. And also, because their record is known to the committee is in a stronger position to really pinpoint specific areas that they think you had problems or where they had concern during your tenure, during the first term. So, again, I think it's a wonderful kind of process that we have, but we need to fine-tune it. Especially, I'm not happy with the time. I don't think it's necessary to put somebody down for 6 hours as if the person is on trial. We should do away with that.
So we should have a time limitation. That's what you're saying. There should be a cap on the length of time the person sits before the committee.
Yeah, that is inclusive because in addition to the vetting committee members asking questions, which I'm saying one individual should not be allowed to dominate it for so long. Each of them should have a time slot that they can ask their questions. Then, of course, also, if you do that, you are not going to have 6 hours sitting on your back all this while, just as if you have been put in the witness box and you are being prosecuted. It's not prosecution. So I think these are the kinds of refinement that I wish the committee can think about. But with this happening, I'm happy because whenever the current party in power finds itself in opposition, I'm hoping they will continue this new tradition where they can also put your opponent on the carpet, but within the new framework that I'm suggesting in terms of time limitation and constraints on the extent to which one individual can dominate the questioning process.
Thank you, Professor Agyemang Duah. Now, let me just loop in Dr. Nansata Yakubu, talking about knowledge of subject matter of the sector that you're nominated to head. We know there's also the notion that ministers are not exactly supposed to know so much about their ministries or have any specialized training for their ministries. But are we now saying that ministers need to also be technocrats? If we're expecting to hear knowledge from them, aren't we requiring them to be technocrats?
Not necessarily. It's a policy issue. You need to be able to communicate competence, for your own readiness to serve in that particular ministry. The ministry structure, as we know, has a lot of human resource to support you. You have chief directors, you have directors of the different departments, you have agencies. Those that are decentralized even have decentralized, agencies all the way to the local government. So it's a whole setup that you are going to. And for civil servants that you are going to, or public servants that you go to work with, you would go and leave after a while. So they are the continuum. When you go, they would be the ones to ease you in, like when you join a new job role, they give you the orientation and all that. But you need at least a certain level of, how would you put it, to be able to grasp even the concepts. You have to grasp concepts. You have to be able to grasp the policy framework, the policy environment within which you are going to serve, and recognize that you are probably coming from a different ministry and you are being given a different portfolio and you have to prepare for it. For those that are coming even from the same portfolio, there's now performance-based monitoring. So they would need to look, how did you perform when you were given the task in the first cycle? Then you are coming back to seek in a way it's like a mandate that is going to be renewed. What were the issues that happened that would need a lens to look at? How did you perform? Did you perform them well? Are you able to still continue in the next role. So they look at those. So it is not that you should be a technocrat, but indeed you should be able to have like the sound conceptual thinking. You should be able to think conceptually. You lead policy and interventions at the ministry. But if the basics are not right, then how are we going to even go to a policy stage? For instance, when Prof was speaking, he talked about the issue of marine science and all that within the fisheries sector. I've heard arguments of people said, oh, fisheries, you can go and meet fishermen and fisherwomen. Who told you those fishermen and women don't know marine science? We were all in this country last year or so, 2 years, when we had this whole close season argument, where the fishermen union were saying that don't close it in July or whatever, close it in August, and the government said close, and there was a whole hula baloo. They understand their science. They know what they are talking. We have issues with maritime boundaries in this country. We have issues with piracy. We are going to international courts. And you are telling me this is not just about premix and going to sell shitolu, as it was indicated for people at the shores. That is not what going to the fisheries ministries is talking about. And indeed, it's not about anybody's English. How do you even articulate the policy? How do you articulate? If you are asked what is fishing, if you are asked what are the 3 sectors of the fishing, and even for instance, if you see the stance of the agri minister who said extension workers are in the informal sector. As we were trying to elaborate, yes, he might have given a curt response, but at least he's told you that they are in the informal sector. But in this case, you don't know what extension officers is. That is where we are at. So that is where we are saying you don't need to be a technocrat, but you should be able to have the wherewithal to understand the policy issues that will concern the ministry, because you will be the lead. And you will be the first point of call. So if we are seeing this now, should we allow it to go all the way and then ask ourselves deeper questions ahead? Or are we saying there's nobody else that can do the job and it must necessarily be the status quo? Those are the questions that we are asking. Nobody is saying we need a minister for that sector. Yes, we do. But is the person nominated the best person to go? So we are all looking at Parliament to see what would happen at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Yakubu. Now, if you can just give me a wrap of your expectations going forward in 1 minute. We still have Minister of Finance, Ken Oforiatta. He has not been vetted yet. Honorable Peter Mewu has also not been vetted yet. Mr. Awal Mohammed has not been vetted yet. What are your expectations? We also have Mr. Lanchimantin, who has also not come before the committee yet. What do you think going forward?
Well, I'm sure we are going to have, therefore, apart from Honorable Amewu moving across, I think, to energy, the rest, I think, are in same ministries. I think so, yeah. So I think we are going to have an issue of performance-based kind of summations at their vetting. And I think it's going to generally be positive. Yes, we would have that if the timing was shorter, as Prof said, I'm sure all of us would watch all of them every day. But usually for me, once it goes beyond an hour, we all start fidgeting and trying to do other things. But the point is that I am expecting that these are ministers who already are in their portfolio or have the capacity to be able to give us better briefs and responses to the policy issues for the ministries that they have been nominated. I'm looking forward to a positive, interaction with them, with the community, and it will be beautiful to work and hear some of
better briefs and responses. Issues, That's what Dr. Yakubu is expecting of the nominees yet to be vetted. Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah, if you can also just wrap it up for me in 30 seconds. Expectations. You've already mentioned there should be a cap on the time. What else?
Well, but first of all, also note that there are 2 others we haven't mentioned. The 2 former Deputy Chief of Staffs, both have been made ministers. Now, I can only reinforce the point already made by my good friend, Dr. Yakubu. Look, ministerial position is not a simple, a common kind of position. Heading the whole ministry is to support the president in executing his policies and programs. But you as the minister is the one who leads the formulation of policy in your ministry. That's why knowledge-based approach to this is very important. So we should not minimize the need for any appointee to have knowledge of the area is going to work. Without that, how can you lead the policy formulation, the policy articulation, and the policy implementation? Above that also, as a minister, you're going to interact not only with your local constituency, you have international engagements. You're going to represent this country at international fora. And look, I'll be embarrassed as the Ghanaian if the minister goes out there to New York or wherever it is in the world and to demonstrate such poor knowledge of what you stand for. So look, the nation's reputation, image worldwide is at stake here, not to talk about our own internal image and all. So just to run up, I'm saying that ministers should have substance in the area where they have been appointed to work. And if the appointee knows that the one he's going to appoint doesn't have that substance, then the person is not doing the country the service that the country deserves.
Thank you so much, Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah, a governance expert. His closing remarks: we should not minimize the need for a nominee to have knowledge of the sector in which they have been appointed to. This conversation was enriched also by Dr. Nansata Yakubu, a democracy engineer, governance expert, and Professor Baffour Agyemang Duah, also a governance expert. My name is Nuong Faalong. Thank you for joining us on Spotlight. See you Wednesday evening, same time. Good evening.